We're also brought to you by PropSwap, America's #1 app to buy and sell sports bets. Use promo code SGP on your first deposit and receive up to $500 in bonus cash. That's PropSwap.com, promo code SGP. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up at UnderdogFantasy.com with promo code SGPN and receive a free $25 entry to use in Best Ball Mania 2 for a chance to win $1 million. And, of course, don't forget to download the SGPN app in the App Store or Google Play Store. Ooh, welcome, everyone, to the Sports Gambling Podcast. I'm Sean, stacking the money green with my partner in picks, Ryan, Real Money Kramer. What's happening, Kramer Dog?
Well, let's pour. Hopefully, LeBron is giving a prayer for my beard. It's no longer with us. A little midsummer shedding, maybe, but not getting in the way of me talking fantasy football.
No, Ryan.
And I figured, we're talking best balls. Why not smoothing up the face look as well?
Looking sharp.
Thank you.
Trimming your beard. Let it.
Well,
now the continuity is going to be all off with people's minds will be blown because we're pre-taping this. Kramer's on vacation. We're knocking out some fantasy football previews. Of course, it's part of a series. We already got our top 10 fantasy football tight ends up. Make sure you check that out. This, of course, is the top 10 fantasy football quarterbacks for 2021. Of course, warning, you will be hearing some hot takes. And I don't like to brag, but you're listening to a guy who predicted Josh Allen, #1 fantasy football quarterback in 2020. I'm looking at the numbers. I'm crunching them. And you know who it is? Josh Allen, #1 fantasy football quarterback in 2020. So lock
you
that
were
up.
the #1 most accurate fantasy projections guy when dealing with the #1 quarterback from 2020.
Yes. Well, and I did really well in a lot of the best ball stuff. We weren't with Underdog at the time. Maybe I could have made a run because I had a ton of Josh Allen stacks. I was probably a little lower on Steph Diggs, but I was all in on Josh Allen. Like I said in 2020. And he carried me in best ball. Like he was one of my best bets.
No, I mean just the ceiling. It's so high.
It is. Josh Allen, amazing. But we got a lot of amazing quarterbacks to break down, Ryan. And, of course, we're talking the National Football League. You can bet it all over at WynnBET. That's right. WYNNBet.com. Head over there today. Get your $500 risk-free bet. Terms and conditions do apply over at WynnBET.com. They got it all, man. You want to get some sweet promos? They got it. You want to get involved in some sweet parlays? WynnBET has you covered. Oh man. MLB, little NBA finals, whatever it is, and especially the NFL preseason. Get down on some of those player props. The WynnBET app truly has it all. Can't say enough. All you got to do is go to WynnBET.com, WYNNBET.com. If you want to win big, you got to do it with WynnBET. WYNNBet.com. Let's get to it, Kramer. Top 10 fantasy football quarterbacks. It's my quarterback, man. Number 10, I'll let you have the honors, Ryan. Who's your number 10 quarterback?
You warn people of the hot takes. You
Yes.
should also make sure everyone's sitting down. Maybe not driving.
Daniel Jones did not make my top 10. I'll get that out of the way.
Wow. This ceiling is tremendous. I mean, his ceiling is Josh Allen, so let's not forget that. Let's never forget that. My number 10
my
guy.
ceiling is Josh Allen.
What's that mean?
It means you can
You
make
as
up
an
some,
NFL quarterback?
Yeah, we have a
No.
similar ceiling.
No, unlikely.
Dude,
I've
Josh
seen you,
Allen?
I've seen you throw a football, and I've seen Josh Allen throw a football.
And I've seen Daniel Jones.
I understand. You're putting yourself into a tight situation when he rises to the all-rise success story. The culture is building. Look, we'll get to it later, Sean. But let's start with my number 10 guy. I'm looking at the latest update. By the way, I'm having a lot of fun with the fantasy rank. The fact that I can constantly tweak them without having to do a whole spreadsheet thing.
Oh, it's great.
It's unnecessary because I've been making just constant changes. And my number 10 guy, I thought it was fitting that I include one of our favorite Team Ryan members in the back end of the rankings here, mainly to talk about him. Yes, you can tell me how it's hard to see him doing it again. Arthur Smith was a big reason why. Blah blah blah. Look, when you look at guys last year who had absolutely astronomical ceilings, he falls into a very small group. And yes, sure, they do have Derrick Henry. They're going to want to run the ball a lot. They also have a dog shit defense.
Yeah.
They also have a dog shit
division
passing defense. And again, they could be in some shit show shootouts. So you add in a little Julio Jones, and you just have like grown-ass men. This is the ultimate team that looks great coming off the bus. And then the last thing you sprinkle in with Mr. Tannehill, those legs, right? Sneaky ability to run. Of course, he was a wide receiver at Texas A&M, but also a sneaky ability to find the end zone. So I think we know you're going to love all the guys who can run. I think that's going to be the theme for you this year is give me a guy who can use his legs.
Yeah.
And I think Tannehill gives you enough of a ceiling just with the arm, with the talent around him, with the defense, the ingredients on the team. Bad decision, as you point out, to then also add in a little bit of that running upside, a little bit of the he's a bigger dude who can find the end zone upside. So he's kind of in a tier with a bunch of other guys. I will say I left Dakota Prescott off the list.
Oh,
which,
he's also not on my list, right?
You know, obviously we're being a little bit of the anti-Cowboy slander because Dak does fit some of those areas. But what I will say is I don't know if he's going to have the same rushing bonus, that rushing bump. And so if you're telling me I got to take a Dakota Rain Prescott coming off an injury and talk about him in my top 10 quarterbacks, no thank you. I mean, he's going like 5th or 6th, maybe 7th consensus. So we're not taking it. But anyway, Ryan Tannehill kind of in a mess with some other quarterbacks, but I do like his upside. I think his ceiling is one of the more appealing kind of, mid-tier quarterbacks.
I'm also high on Ryan Tannehill. I'm actually noticeably higher than you and the market on Ryan Tannehill. He's
I feel
probably
like,
one of my hotter takes.
Okay, because
here's a question for
I
you,
love when I come in. I'm much higher than the market on Tannehill as well, but you're just like 6th gear. Let's fucking go.
Long Cox.
Who had more rushing touchdowns in 2020, Lamar Jackson or Ryan Tannehill?
Yeah, no, I mean I think that's one of the areas.
Well,
maybe
what's the answer?
It's Ryan Tannehill.
No, it's a tie.
Oh.
But they both had 7. That's
okay.
And I mean, watching those. They don't have obviously near the goal line. They'll give it to Derrick Henry, but him putting it in, he is a QB sneak guy. That matters in these rankings, whether or not you're a QB sneak guy. And yeah, I'm with you. I'm super high on Tannehill. I'll add a couple of points when we get to him on my rankings. But my number 10 fantasy football quarterback for this year, rookie out of the Ohio State, Justin Fields. There's always one rookie quarterback who finds his way into the top 10 fantasy football rankings. Last year, it was Justin Herbert. This year, I think it's going to be Justin Fields. Mitch Trubisky had 19.2 fantasy points per game. You put in Justin Fields in a similar situation with a much higher skill set. And I think much like Jalen Hurts, who we'll get to much later in the podcast, at least for me, he's a guy who's going to be able to run, and he's got a big body, and he can take a bunch of shots. He's a guy who's going to crack the top 10 for me fantasy because I think he's going to be a willing runner when he gets his shot, which I think will be early on in the season.
Can I just, this is where I would bring up just one little point. You didn't at all have any concern about his ability to find the field. And I know you're going to say, well, it's Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
Okay. This guy was dropping for a reason. And specifically, if his debilitation, as his debilitating trait was he wasn't good on the whiteboard, he wasn't good diagnosing plays, he wasn't an on the field dynamo between the ears, then not to shit on your pick, I'm higher than market on him too. I like the idea of what he could bring, but I do think the Bears are still going to sport a pretty decent defense, and I do think there's a legitimate chance that he struggles to find the field because he doesn't have it between the ears. So, I think you would be stupid to not end up with some Justin Fields in best ball. But if you're telling me putting him at number 10 tells me you would want to, you would week one take him, you would draft him now and season long to be your week 1 starter. And I think Vegas is telling you you're wrong right now because Andy Dalton's still the favorite. To get those snaps
I think he'll start a couple games early on. Again, this is a 17-game season, Ryan.
Thank you.
Breaking
First
news.
of many times you'll be telling me it's a 17-game
Breaking
season.
news. Andy Dalton has ugly OTA practice while Justin Fields shines. I think he's gonna pop in a big way. The coaching staff on a very, very hot seat.
Yeah.
So they can say they're gonna keep Andy Dalton. They're gonna say they're gonna stick with Andy Dalton. But any sort of slight mishap by Andy Dalton, aka prime time against the Rams defense week 1, Justin Fields is coming through.
And I'll say this: I do think you could potentially find out, because I'm with you. If he's not on the field week 1, he must really be done. Because that's all it can be.
I think they could give him. I think they could give Dalton the week 1 thing because they said Dalton
so he
was
can be the
starter.
savior. And just,
Yeah, I mean, we both agree Andy Dalton is playing with a short leash, right?
Yeah. Oh no. I'm not ranking him low because I think he's not going to get a couple games early in the season. Because I think if you like him, his per game points down the stretch could be big.
Yeah.
I'm saying that I think the staff is going to want to put him on the field, and I don't know if he's going to be ready. And if there was a quarterback who I'd bet real money right now to say like he might look incredibly overmatched when he steps on the field for the first time, it's Justin Fields.
But the way around that is running the football. I don't think he's going to look amazing passing, but I think he's going to run the ball a ton.
And
bootlegs.
You have to be competent enough. And I'm worried that he's on another. People said the same thing about Jalen Hurts, if you remember a little bit. And Jalen Hurts came out and showed, like, at a minimum, maybe it was smart coaching.
Well, and I think
at a minimum, he was making smart decisions on the field for the most part.
And I think it's probably a similar comparison, but one, he doesn't have to dethrone Carson Wentz, who was very entrenched in that starting role in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And two, I think they can prepare him, and he will be ready to go and ready to run and rely on his legs.
Again, I'm going to have shares of him. I just find it interesting that no one is mentioning that he has to overcome a starter. No one is mentioning the horrible offensive line. There's a lot of reasons to not look. I'm high on Allen Robinson. I get it. I like Justin Fields. I'm just saying. I don't know if I'm drafting him to be my starter.
And I think horrible O-line, again, as we're talking strictly fantasy, there's a world where that helps you because you're forced to run.
How'd that work out for Joe Burrow? I'm just saying, like.
Well, Burrow isn't the running quarterback that Justin Fields is.
I know. I'm just saying. I don't want to. It's not like it's a positive to have a poor offensive line. Number 9. I don't know where to put him. Aaron Rodgers.
I also have him at number 9.
Yeah, he's got. I think we probably have the same logic. Then he's got to be in the top 10. Probably like he might be in like a slight notch up from Ryan Tannehill to me in terms of the last guy like I feel good about, and maybe he is in that tier because still don't know if he's going to be starting, but if he is, he's obviously going to be value, and I wanted to make sure my rankings put him in a spot where I can draft him.
Well, and apparently he has some crazy opt-out clause in his contract that he can pull the trigger on and completely opt out of the season without having to give back some of that money. I still just don't see that happening at all.
Interesting.
But yeah, you would have to make it very soon. So actually, probably while you're listening to this, it would have already happened if he's going to completely opt out, which would be an Aaron Rodgers move. I don't see it happening. I still think he's going to try and force their hand up to training camp, even up to like missing a game or two. And again, that's why I have him at number 9. I still think it's going to be wherever he ends up playing. I still think he plays for the Packers. I still think he's going to be in FU mode. I don't think that 48 touchdowns that he had is a number he's going to hit again, but I still think it's going to be high 30s. So, yeah, I mean, number 9 sounds about right for me.
And I think if you're playing like the either-or game with these quarterbacks, once you get down here, you start having guys like Tom Brady in that conversation where it's like, do you really want to Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers? That's maybe an interesting one. But once you go higher,
yeah, Brady was 7th last year in fantasy points.
Yeah, and you look at that team, they don't seem to give a shit about running the ball. They don't seem to have the players that can run the ball. They're still trying to trot out my favorite guy, Ronald Jones. And
Rojo.
But anyway, let's move on. So that was 9. This is 8. I don't know. I assume I'm higher than market, but Jalen Hurts, where is he landing for most people? Because
you probably have him right at consensus.
He's right at consensus. Because I feel like had I drafted him true to my rankings, having him I think I have him somewhere in the 80s, 80 to 90 range overall. I feel like I can get him every time. So, he's going in the 8th round typically. So I think he's even lower than that. And again, there's the obvious risk of we don't know. We don't know what the offense is going to look like. We don't know if it's going to take to Jalen Hurts. We don't know if Jalen Hurts can be an NFL quarterback. But assuming he can, and I guess maybe I didn't quite give Justin Fields the same level of fairness because I've seen Jalen Hurts at least play in NFL games. I think the defense that surrounds him gives him an opportunity to really hit all of the points you said about Justin Fields in terms of having a massive rushing upside, having talent around him. And so I like, Jalen Hurts here. This starts the tier of like the guys who, if I want to end up with a quarterback I can trust, I feel like it's my top 8 guys. And so I wanted to make sure Jalen Hurts is there because he does have a super high ceiling. There is a version of this.
He does, Ryan. That he does.
But it's not because the Eagles turn out to be a good team. It's because they're a team that's in a lot of shootouts because their defense is giving up the ball. And Jalen Hurts the weapons around him work, and the offensive system works. So I do think the world is relatively low on Eagles, with the exception of Devontae Smith. I think he's probably going a bit higher, but everyone else, it seems like we're lower than we should be on the Eagles. So
I have obviously a litany of Justin or Jalen Hurts stuff to get to, but
Freudian slip there.
Well, I was about to read my number 8, Justin Herbert, but the Eagles' offensive line being completely healthy is a huge difference between these two teams. And, I mean, from the team from 2020 and the team from 2021, I think that's going to be a massive difference as far as, like, helping him complete passes and the screen game as well. So I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities to be on the field and to throw passes in the offense.
I like the fact that you're probably going to get to learn a lot week 1 against those Atlanta Falcons, which
if he doesn't have a good game against Atlanta, that's certainly a troubling sign. Justin Herbert is my number 8. Slightly worried about him having to learn a new system, but by all accounts, he's, OTA. Herbert, the perfectionist, little cap there. The one thing that kind of scares me is his fantasy points with Eckler involved really drop. I think it was like 21.4 overall. But before week 12, when Eckler came back, it was 29.2, and that's when Eckler came back from injury. So that's something I'm kind of keeping an eye on. I guess it was just basically that he wasn't as aggressive pushing the ball downfield because he had that easy stuff with Eckler. Hopefully they go back to unleashing the cannon that is Herbert, a.k.a. Justin Herbert. But, I mean, he's a fun kid to watch.
You're so into soccer. You're just dropping French pronunciations on everything.
And he came off a year where he was number 8. I'm running him back at number 8, 30 touchdowns. He also sneakily is a QB sneak guy as well. 5 rushing touchdowns. I think that makes sense for him again. I think 8 should be where he lands again. He had some super hot weeks. Maybe he's able to get back to that. But yeah, I'm super high on Justin Herbert.
Yeah, and I've seen some outlets talk about his strength of schedule against as being a tougher schedule, but like even when I just look in the division, I see 4 games right away where I'm just like, God damn, I can't wait to. Yeah, I would love to have him to start those weeks. I'm higher on Herbert, so we can wait to talk about him more. But I think, like you said, he was 8 last year, and I think we heard a nugget earlier in the offseason about how maybe he was really good under pressure, and that's maybe set to regress. I think there's a lot of variables here, but the one variable that maybe is more of a constant is we saw what he did last year in a COVID year.
Yeah.
In a situation where he wasn't supposed to be the guy.
No, I mean, whole weird offseason.
Dudes are just gamers.
Yeah.
And they passed the eye test, and in everything you say about Tua, Herbert was the opposite last year, right? Like he
knew the playbook. He stepped up when he had his shot, and he didn't look like hot shit.
And the play that I think about is that play where he ran it around the edge, lowered his shoulder, and dove for the pylon. I think it was. And at that moment, you're like,
that game against the Bucs. I mean, looking back on it now, especially when the Bucs Super Bowl champs, like he was just unloading on that really good defense, even with a ton of pressure. That to me is the most. If I'm a Chargers fan, the most exciting thing is the way he handles pressure. And apparently, according to the nerds, that's not something that you can do year after year. But I mean, it's hard to. To me, Herbert is the ultimate eye test guy.
You know what though? I think there is additional and you know what? He's my number 5. We'll just finish talking about him now. But there is additional context needed when talking about people's ability to play in pressure situations, because I would be willing to bet that, yes, when you normalize this data over all quarterbacks in the NFL, absolutely, pressure, you perform well under pressure, you're probably going to regress towards the mean. But certain guys, and this is where, maybe it's important to have a little gut in your handicapping process. Yeah. Certain guys just look like they have it, right? Like, you say Daniel Jones looks like he's completely unaware of everything around him, which Josh Allen has a little of too, which is terrifying when you're watching it, right? Like he doesn't see behind you. Then there's guys like Russell Wilson, who it's just like, give that guy the fucking ball.
Eyes in the back of their head.
And I think what Herbert showed us is he errs more on the side of the Aaron Rodgers, the Russell Wilson DNA, who, maybe it's a sixth sense. Maybe this is evolution of humans we're speaking about here, but I'm willing to.
I love that humans are evolving to pick up blindside pressure. That's like one of the traits we're developing as a society.
Well, it would make sense.
Yeah.
That if you, again, being aware, right? Sixth sense, being aware of what's around you. This is like real shit. Go, you want to have fun on YouTube, go for it. But I think Herbert, I love the upside, and for that reason, I'm going to bump him up to 5.
Yeah, maybe 8's a little low on.
Plays the Raiders and the Chiefs twice.
That's true, and that's certainly why I want to have some more shares of Herbert. He's definitely on my guys I need more of on the best ball draft list. We're talking value here, getting ahead of the market. Drafting these guys low when they have huge ceilings. You can be doing the same thing over at PropSwap.com. Of course, use that promo code SGP. PropSwap, America's #1 app to buy and sell sports bets. That's right. PropSwap, they're all about getting the best odds. We've all had you take a trip to Vegas. Maybe you're out there signing up week 1 for the Circa Millions. You lay some futures bets out there. All of a sudden, they're looking pretty good. You got 100 to 1, a 10 to 1. You want to hedge. Now, let's say you don't live in Vegas or somewhere where you could sell the sportsbook ticket. Enter PropSwap. You can buy and sell the sports tickets. It's pretty easy to use, man. Just go to PropSwap.com. Use that promo code SGP. Get a sweet deposit bonus up to $500. Just that easy. But again, like let's say you're sitting on 100 to 1 and you're getting a little antsy, you want to sell it out for a guaranteed profit at 50 to 1. Why not do that? Guarantee yourself a nice payday, walk away with it. And on the other end, it's all about finding value. So if you see the guy listing a 100 to 1 ticket, maybe it's priced now in the marketplace at 50 to 1. Hey, offer him 40 to 1. You can bid lower on PropSwap.com. Maybe he'll take maybe he needs the cash, he'll take it. Just go to PropSwap.com, promo code SGP to get involved over there. Kramer, we are back on our list talking fantasy football quarterbacks. You're on your 7th quarterback.
I am. And real quick, the last thing I meant to throw this out because I did the work to grab the number, but 16 yards a game is what Herbert averaged on the ground.
Yeah.
Which is not nothing.
Little legs to him.
All right, number 7. This is probably more just a statement on my opinion of what this team is going to do and the fact that the market's low on them. But give me Matty Stafford.
Matt Stafford did not make my top 10 list.
I'm okay with that, and I like. Could you argue with me that the ceiling that some of the running guys like Jalen Hurts
currently he's at 11
higher?
for me, for what it's worth.
But I just love. Jared Goff put up plenty of QB1 games in this offense with the same exact weapons around him.
That's the angle you're looking to build on Matt Stafford.
Say what you will about Matt Stafford, but based on what I've heard, people who reported on him, played with him, coached him, and honestly, after Aaron Rodgers showed us he couldn't chug a beer, what did he do? Immediately show the world he could chug a fucking beer. All right, those are 4 big check marks that
we got to get our shit going.
That he's a gamer. And now, I certainly watched him have games in Detroit with shit around him. And we all agree that Detroit is one of the shittiest franchises the NFL's ever seen. Now, there is a version of this where his environment went from an F- to an A+. He now has professional receivers everywhere you can see. A young running back who looked like he could be a bell cow and one of the, smartest – close to us, one of the smartest coaches who's going to put the team in the best position, hence why Jared Goff was successful. So all of those ingredients, and I find it hard leaving him outside the top 10 because I think you would have a hard time telling me or arguing with anyone that the Rams aren't going to be a top 5 offense in the NFC, a top 10 offense overall. Like that seems like a
real
hot take. And so when you look at how this offense is going to be successful, sure, they're going to run the ball. But this is a team that's going to put up points because Sean McVay understands the importance of getting out fast and getting up on teams. And I think when I don't wish to admit this, but I've listened to a little bit of that podcast he does. He's kind of a hard guy to listen to. But I hear a guy.
He's like a millennial Madden. It just doesn't work.
The number one thing he seems like irked by is situations where he had a lead and he gave it up. And a lot of times he's mentioned this, the idea of changing your philosophy based on the situation in the game. And so I think going out and getting Matty Stafford is because when he goes up, he doesn't have to feel like he needs to get conservative because Jared Goff is his fucking quarterback. And so I think we're going to see this Rams team put up a lot of points this year. I think I love Robert Woods. I love Cooper Kupp. I love Tyler Higbee, if you've already caught the tight end episode. So give me Matt Stafford.
Yeah, I mean, the case is against Matt Stafford. And, again, I'm just slightly lower. I got him at 11 right now. I just think, one, anytime you're putting together a dream team, always a bit of a red flag for me. And
why is it a dream team, though?
Well, because it's like I guess you're bringing in the big-name quarterback in free agency, new system, whatever. The comparison, I guess, would be Tom Brady. To me, Matt Stafford is no Tom Brady. To me, Matt Stafford had some great games and great numbers in a dome playing from behind. And I realize he's also going to a dome, but playing from behind, playing in garbage time a bunch. Like, I think that really padded Matt Stafford's numbers. We've never seen Matt Stafford be successful under pressure. Now, it is the Los Angeles market, so there can only be so much pressure, but people are talking about the Rams as a Super Bowl contender, NFC contender. Jared Goff won a playoff game. So for him to have a better season than Jared Goff, he's got to get to the NFC Championship game. That is an intense amount of pressure, and I don't know if Matt Stafford has it in him. That's my argument against him. And again, I don't think he's going to completely fail. I just think we're setting the bar so high for Matt Stafford, and I'm not quite there with him.
I think what we would have said last year is, boy, this Rams team, if they could only get a quarterback.
Right, and I still hold that to be true. I think Stafford's a slight upgrade, but not a massive upgrade off of Jared Goff.
I'll say this. You want to talk about him dealing with pressure, him having to opt into pressure. He didn't choose to go to the Detroit Lions. You agree with that, right? He was drafted to the Detroit Lions. All right, but as a kid out of Texas, he chose to come to SEC country and play for Georgia. That tells me he wanted a harder path. You don't kids coming from Texas to play in the SEC are doing so because they want the challenge. They're not playing in the Big 12. They're not going out west to play in the Pac-12. So, or back then the Pac-12. So, step back off my guy. But, yeah, I love the ceiling on him. Like, honestly, if Matt Stafford's the number one quarterback when we're all said and done here, that wouldn't be crazy.
12 seasons, 0 playoff wins. To me, he's not a gamer. My number 7, I mean, you don't think that's a fair critique of Matt Stafford?
He was on the Lions the entire time.
Right, and if you're on a bad team and you're a quarterback, you make that team good enough to get a playoff win.
Yeah, they got in there with him, which is pretty impressive. Not something to trust.
One season out of 12 years.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not jumping. I think that's if we had this conversation before the trade, you would love the situation for Matt Stafford. And I think you're souring on it for unknown air reasons.
Okay. I think Matt Stafford's a bit overrated. I mean, I think he was fine fantasy-wise in Detroit. Again, playing in garbage time from behind. I think the fact that, like you said, they're going to be playing with a lead, that there's massive expectations, that essentially he has to get to the NFC Championship or the season's a failure, I think is a ton of pressure for him.
All right.
Number 7 quarterback for me, Patrick Mahomes. Again.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Come on.
I have him number 7.
Oh.
Where do you have him?
Higher than number 7.
Okay. I think there's going to be a slight downgrade in his passing touchdowns. He doesn't give you the rushing upside that he had in previous years. He only had 2 rushing touchdowns, 308 yards. I think he's going to have a good year. I don't think 7 here is a shot at Patrick Mahomes. I just think there's 6 quarterbacks. Again, the fact that we see, looking at last year's list, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers got up there because he had 48 passing touchdowns. I don't see a 45 for me. For Mahomes to be a top 3 quarterback, he's got to have 45 plus passing touchdowns, and I just don't. I think he's going to have a good year. I just don't think he's going to get. I mean, like Justin Herbert threw for 30. I mean, I think he's going to have a similar stat line to Tom Brady last year: 40 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 3 rushing touchdowns. I think to me, my projections have him low 40s passing touchdowns, and if he's not giving you much rushing, I can't put him in the top 5.
I think the difference is the arm talent ceiling. Maybe. I mean, he's my number 3. So
okay.
But I think the other thing that you're essentially outlining is that you're never going to stack Patrick Mahomes in a best ball.
No, I will throw a couple darts on Patrick Mahomes because he does have that crazy random high ceiling where he does get you that 50-plus passing touchdown year. I don't think 2021 is going to be that year, but yeah, in a best ball, I have a couple stacks.
No, I'm just saying, like, if you rank him that low, it's going to be very hard to ever draft him because you're going to be taking him so high above where you feel like he's ranked. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, I guess that.
No, I mean, and yeah, sometimes I'll do a best ball draft where I don't use my exact rankings.
But you're completely out on him in season long then.
No, I mean, I probably won't end up drafting him because him in the second round or wherever he's going to go, I'm probably not going to draft him. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for me, the reason he's 3 and he's not in the 1 or the 2 spot is simply, partially like you discussed, he's not necessarily going to get anything with his legs, but more so, I just think we're seeing some guys who are showing that they can do it with their arms and their legs. And they can do it with their legs in a way that the league really hasn't ever seen before, just from a sheer volume. So I still think it's hard with that Andy Reid offense and the weapons around him, though, to put him much lower than that.
Who's your number 6?
Number 6, it's Mr. Unlimited.
I also have number 6.
Let's just remind, and I almost feel like maybe he should go above Herbert, who's my number 5. But Wilson, simply put, 30 touchdowns is a lock. He's locked in for 30 touchdowns. You've given people a lot of reason to believe. You read reports. Maybe they're going to let Russ cook again.
Well, and it's a hybrid of letting Russ cook because the more I was
cook and lean meat.
Yeah,
only.
exactly. I was a little out on Russell Wilson, then doing more of the work. The offensive coordinator Shane Waldron, who coming over from the Rams, sounds like they're going to bring the quick passing game, which is good for his completion percentage, good for yards after the catch guy like a DK Metcalf who can get some easy stuff, run after the catch. Even good for Gerald Everett because he has a history with Everett. I know you're out on him, but I'm
not out on Everett. I'm just
much like last year where Russell Wilson was higher ranked in fantasy, ended up getting more fantasy points than Patrick Mahomes, just slightly. I think a similar scenario here in 2021. He started out insanely hot and then cooled off. I was originally worried that they were going to go run heavy and Chris Carson was going to be a huge part of it, but it sounds like this new OC is going to let them pass. I think his season is going to be a little bit more balanced, where last year, Russell Wilson, those first 5 games, he was winning DraftKings Millie Makers and then cooled off super bad in the second half of the season. I think it's going to be a more even season for Russell Wilson fantasy-wise, which is why he'll end up in a similar spot. He was number 5 last year. I got him number 6 this year with you. So I'm still pretty high on Russell Wilson, all things being equal.
And part of what I think bakes into this ranking is the fact that he plays 16 games. And we're seeing that more and more. These guys are, a little bit more fragile. And you might miss a game or two.
Russell Wilson never missed a start.
So I think it helps to, granted he looks like he's wearing a concrete armor out there and he can't quite move as well as he used to. Yeah, it's hard to not put him up there, right? As long as that dude's he's still if you ask me the question, I got to start a team. I get there's a lot of fun guys to pick, even Patrick Mahomes, but it's hard to not say Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
So number 5 for me was Mr. Justin Herbert, who I think the upside, and who knows, maybe also getting a little Rams love in form of new head coach. Maybe he brings over some of the similar philosophies. But, again, my 5 was Herbert. We talked about him at length. I love the upside. And all the way back to the college football tournament, shout out to the Sims. That arm talent is undeniable.
No, it's legit. He's got a cannon.
Who's your 5?
I'm going number 5, Lamar Jackson.
Okay.
Which I think people, and again, he's on my list of guys that maybe I wish I have more shares of in best ball.
Oh, yeah.
He finished number 10 last year. Everyone drafted him number 1, so I think the market is completely out on Lamar Jackson. But he still had 1,000 yards rushing, 26 touchdowns on 9 interceptions. I think we might not get to that 1,000 rush yard mark, but I'm optimistic that they're going to be throwing the ball a little bit more. I think they realize that for them to be successful long term, and he talked about how they were going to try and do that last year. They didn't really get to it. I do
deep
think
ball, baby, right?
I do think Harbaugh is committed to trying to get something going with the deep ball. They brought in some more receivers. They were dead last in pass attempts last year, 25.9. If we can get that up to like 30 attempts per game, even 28, 29, get him a couple more passing touchdowns. I think the 5th spot, going from 10 to 5 for Lamar Jackson, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Sean. My number 4, Josh Allen.
Oh, number 4.
And I think here's what I'll say about, and this is more of a gut, because like the offense is going to put him in position to score. His game, his style of game, they're going to score. Like he's a quarterback that's going to put up points. The reason I have him at 4 is I think we saw a high amount of luck last year in terms of his high variance play working out for him. Even in games we watched that we had action on, we're like, how has he not lost the game yet? Or in the games where he lost the game and then somehow won it back. 2 things, I think. One, it's hard for me to see him go through too many more seasons without getting hurt, missing games. So I I put a higher injury risk on him than most. But I think the other side of it is I think if this team and this offensive staff is smart, they are in there. They're self-scouting and they're showing Josh Allen all of these things that he does that put him in a higher risk. Now, there's 2 versions, right? You either let the guy be the guy, and that's part of what makes him the guy, or you try to dial him back. And I think either way, again, his ceiling is still number 1 quarterback with what he can do. I just think everything kind of flowed right for the Bills last year. And I know he was even banged up for a couple of games, but it felt like you got everything that you needed to get out of Josh Allen. We saw those massive, the big games. We saw him get it done even when he wasn't doing it through the air. He can do it a lot of ways. The guys I have over him, if I'm drafting right now, this is my top tier. These top 4 guys, they're mostly interchangeable. If I'm looking to play, a strong quarterback team, I might take the guy who's last available. Now, Josh Allen being drafted where he is, I'm not going to end up with as much Josh Allen as I think I would like. Now, if I get Diggs, does he become a priority and I bump him up a little bit? Absolutely. But Josh Allen, number 4, if you put him at 3rd or 2nd or even 1st, I don't think I can argue with you too much.
Yeah, I got him all the way. I got him up a little bit. And
will Sean predict Josh Allen's fantasy football final ranking again?
Well, that would be a fun bet. My number 4 guy is the Kai God himself, Kyler Murray. I think looking at him, we did see when he got that shoulder injury, he wasn't as impactful as a runner.
Yeah.
And so predicting, again, it's always tough with injury and health. And honestly, like you should just look at every quarterback passing yard prop. It's not fun, and just bet the under on all 32 because of between injury and whatever else happens. Like I feel like 4 or 5 starting quarterbacks are done for the year just to begin with. You win those automatically, you're looking pretty good. But Kyler Murray, his first 8 games, 67.9 rush yards on 9.5 attempts per game. And then it dipped down basically after the shoulder injury, 39 rush yards on 7.9 attempts per game. That really was the big difference in a fantasy perspective. He went from 33.2 fantasy points per game all the way down to 23.1. So I think he's going to rush slightly less, but I think it will be balanced out. He only had 26 passing touchdowns, which I think is kind of low. And again, you talk about teams with bad defenses. They play in a dome. I think he's going to get at least 30 this season. So I think he's going to maybe not run quite as much. Maybe split the difference between what you saw in the first 8 and the last 7 games-wise. And number 4 makes sense for me for Kyler there.
Yeah, and I'll just talk about him because I got him at number 2. But I think the more I went through the process, the more I found myself just having irrational hate towards a guy. Like, there's nothing that will prevent this. There's no version of this Cardinals team short of him getting hurt that doesn't see him score. I mean, I think he averaged over the course of the season 24 and change. I think it was Josh Allen and then Patrick Mahomes and then Kyler Murray on
11 rushing touchdowns for Kyler last year.
On a per game basis, he was third. And it does feel like we're going to see more, right? DeAndre Hopkins, they got an offseason, right? We don't love Cliff Kingsbury, but I think, and I'm actually a little concerned that the defense might actually be competent. But assuming they can have enough of a shootout game and enough just like we've seen it, right? Like Kyler's like the ultimate player empowerment guy in the sense that he reminds me of the NBA. You watch this guy all game, and then when it matters at the end, boom, 80-yard drive, no problem. So honestly, he's here. He's at number 2 for me because he's the only guy on this list that can compete with Lamar Jackson and put up 4-figure rushing seasons. And I would even go as far to say like him scoring that many touchdowns on the ground. Like there's no need to say regression in his case because of what he offers on the ground. It's just a slight different breed. It's not Jalen Hurts. It's not Justin Fields. Like there's something a little bit different with the way that Kyler deploys his legs.
Kyler,
like a cheerleader,
Yeah, he's got that.
Can't
nice
believe
little
I got
bounce.
him number 2. What the fuck?
Yeah, come on, Ryan. We're supposed to hate specific guys. Kyler Murray being one of them. Of course, we're doing a ton of these Underdog Live Best Ball Mania 2 drafts, and they're so much fun. If you haven't signed up for Underdog Fantasy yet, I don't know what you're doing. Use that promo code SGPN. You get a free $25. Highly recommend taking that $25, using it as a free entry in their Best Ball Mania 2. Again, best ball, the best way to play fantasy. You just draft the players every week. They give you your best lineups. You don't have to manage the team. You don't have to scour the waiver wire. You don't have to be in some dumb group text with your cousin. Very easy to use. $25. You can crank them out left and right. Don't mock draft ever again. Just throw out $25. Maybe you win $1 million. If not, there's plenty of other prizes and plenty of other games over at UnderdogFantasy.com. But make sure you use that promo code SGPN for a free $25 entry into the Best Ball Mania 2 contest for your chance to win $1 million. Let's go, baby. My number 3 quarterback, Ryan, and you're going to give me shit, but Ryan Tannehill. Bit of a hot take. But, again, I think the rushing touchdowns are going to be there. There's some concern of Arthur Smith leaving the building, but the guy they have taking over is a guy that's been in the building the entire time. So ideally he knows what to do. Now I'm still
I hope so.
Like scheme wise, they're going to run the same stuff that worked. You bring in Julio Jones. I can't imagine that doesn't help a quarterback. Having Julio Jones, are you kidding me? And then he still has Derrick Henry, who is just like a machine. And maybe he even steals a couple rushing touchdowns away from Derrick Henry if Derrick Henry gets nicked up. Again, Tannehill, not afraid to run a boot, not afraid to put it in near the goal line sneak guy. So, again, the rushing touchdowns, 7 rushing touchdowns, it'll probably dip a little bit, but there's a world where he gets you 7 again and more passing touchdowns. I'm really high on this Titans team the more I look at them. And again, they still have some issues on the back end defensively wise. Like if we were to pick a team you expected to be involved in a lot of shootouts, the Tennessee Titans would be right up there. I mean, we saw them. There was a nice streak last year where the Tannehill stack was involved in a number of milli makers. So
multiple like double stacks even,
Yeah, and I expect a lot of that momentum that they had in the second half of the season to bleed into this season. So give me Ryan Tannehill. I know it's controversial, but Ryan Tannehill, number 3.
Finished 7th on a per game basis last year. So,
yeah, and
is it that controversial?
I feel like when this episode drops, people will be making fun of me for making Ryan Tannehill the 3rd fantasy football quarterback. I feel like I will get some heat for that, Ryan. I'm prepared to stay in the pocket and deliver. But I'm just saying, I could see myself getting some crap for it.
Yeah, maybe. I feel like people will be more disgruntled with your Patrick Mahomes 7 than Ryan Tannehill 3.
Well, one guy in particular, the Chiefs fan, will be. But is that I didn't even think that Patrick Mahomes take was that crazy. He finished 6th last year. To me, making him 7th isn't insane.
No, yeah, of course. When you look
I wasn't trying to.
when you look at a single year result, I guess just coming into a season, it's Patrick Mahomes. He's clearly the guy, and he's in like an optimal offense with Andy Reid. So I guess.
But isn't that what he was last year?
Yeah, and he got hurt.
No, he played 15 games, 38 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 308 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Again, the only reason I don't have him higher is because I don't see him getting more rushing touchdowns than 2. I don't see him getting
I hear
more
you,
rushing
but
yards.
I'll just say this: he still was the top quarterback last year per game in points. So
well, I don't know what you're looking at stat wise because I have it. Josh Allen 29.1.
Yeah, Josh Allen scored
fantasy points per game.
Yeah, I'm using the same platform we put our rankings in, and I'm 25.3 for Patrick Mahomes, 25.32 for Allen. So they're right there, neck and neck. 405 overall.
Yeah, and Mahomes has gotten nicked up a couple times and
I'm just saying, like the point being that Mahomes. You know, if you're applying like, oh, how many times we play this simulation will Patrick Mahomes be the number 7 quarterback? I think that happens less than Tannehill being the 3 quarterback.
Yeah, well, I'm not a fucking simulation, Ryan. I'm not. Why
are you coming at me? I'm telling you what people are going to be mad about. I don't think they're going to be mad about Tannehill. You're so hot take right now. You just want to spew fire everywhere.
No, the Patrick Mahomes number 7 wasn't a hot take. If you want me to move him up to 6 to make you feel better, I will.
Hey, you're not making me feel better.
Oh,
okay. Asked me
who's your number 2 quarterback.
It was 3 was Mahomes, 2 was Kyler. We both talked about them. So. Are you on number 2 then?
Yeah, my number 2,
right.
Josh Allen. Not quite number 1, but
kind of number 1 in your heart. That's why you put him there.
I like Josh Allen. Yeah, not much to like, or not much not to like. I still think like Josh Allen is their goal line back. I mean, have they really done? And I would have maybe moved Josh Allen down a few if they would have drafted a running back in the first round. If they would have got a Travis Etienne, which I don't even know if you'd use him as a goal line back, but they didn't do anything in the offseason that made me think they're going to change their game plan of just putting Josh Allen back in the shotgun, letting him throw the fucking rock. I mean, they got to the AFC Championship. Why would they drastically change any of this? You throw an Emmanuel Sanders into the mix, which I think will help, and I do think Zach Ertz ends up being on the Bills, which will be a nice little – a guy that can maybe catch you 4 touchdowns, nice little red zone target for Josh Allen. And again, Gabe Davis, a potential breakout season. Like, they're right up there. I mean,
they threw it. Josh Allen was 55 of 88 in the red zone last year with 25 touchdowns.
Yeah. I think they can do more. Like, I don't see them slowing down their throwing of the ball, the pace. You throw in the fact that they're going to be at home in front of a Bills crowd, a Bills crowd that didn't really get to watch them in the AFC Championship run. I mean, there were limited fans for a couple playoff games, but I think all that is I'm super high on the Bills as a team, and I think their offense is going to carry them again.
Yeah, and that's the story. They just had a lot of opportunity in the red zone. So whether he's throwing or passing, like he was involved in 32 touchdowns in the red zone, 7 rushing, 25 passing. So again, you nailed it. And again, I have them at 4, but they're all the top 4 quarterbacks for me. They're all sitting there, and what I would say probably I'm willing to start looking at in a season long in the 4th, 5th round. But like we discussed earlier, guys like Mahomes are going in the 3rd, and it's really hard to find a way to take him. My number 1 guy, Sean, Lamar Jackson.
But I feel like you, correct me if I'm wrong, how many shares of Lamar Jackson do you have?
So I went back and looked. I have a couple. I think maybe one from a draft we did on the air. You know what it is?
I feel like you're not taking them a bunch, and this is why it's a fun exercise because you find certain blind spots.
Well, and I think it's the same thing as Kyler when you start talking to me about, how am I going to get someone ranked above Mahomes? That was the exercise. Like, will I take this guy or this guy? And when I look at what Lamar Jackson did in a year where he was bad, he wasn't great. He still put up all the rushing yards.
Yeah,
didn't
still got 1,000 rushing
Didn't
yards.
have a great passing season, and now, bring in a legitimate first-round receiver on the outside in Bateman, bring in a professional in Sammy Watkins. You still have Hollywood Brown. Maybe that works out. Mark Andrews still there. Like, there's no reason this team isn't going to progress a little bit passing the ball, and he's still going to run the ball.
Well, and to even my pass attempts that they were 32nd in the league, like I just don't see that. Even if they're 28th or 26th in the league,
they were 36 by a lot. And granted, they're going to still be a team that runs, and some of that's skewed because Lamar gets so many carries himself. It's kind of okay. But I think the difference will be is you're going to see him connect on some of those deep touchdowns that he wasn't last year. And all he has to do is connect on like one every 3 weeks. And it bumps him up to where, again, in a bad year, he averaged almost 23 points per game. In a bad year, he was 10th overall if total points. So to me, with his legs and honestly his relative durability for a guy who, like, we heard it as soon as he came in. Well, he's gonna miss. It's gonna be hard to play like that in the National Football League. I think the last thing I'll say about Lamar Jackson, I think more than most of these guys, like, he's on an offense that is optimized for him, and I think there are more versions than any other player where he's sitting atop the board at the end of the season because he's thrown for 30 touchdowns, he's taking care of the ball, and he's run the ball for 1,000 yards once again, scoring 10 touchdowns. Like, that just feels like 10 rushing, 30 passing touchdowns is very realistic. And if he does that and rushes for 1,000 yards, it's no contest. Like, there's only a couple players on this board that I think even get the volume opportunity to do that. So Lamar Jackson, I'm fading the regressions team. I will say this: you will see me start to stack more Lamar Andrews at that turn, maybe in the same, like the fifth, because Lamar Jackson is going lower than he should be.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
So yeah, more stacks of Lamar needed.
My number one, your starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. Everyone's gonna kill me for being a homer here, but Jalen Hurts. Come on, are you kidding me? This guy puts the team on his back. Ryan, he finished as the QB3 from weeks 14 to 16. Never less than 18 fantasy points in a game he started, including that debacle where they pulled him for Nate Sudfeld. Like, even that game, which was an ugly game where they didn't start half their starting offensive line, half their skill players, he still put up 18 fantasy points. Like, the ability to run, his ability as a runner, his willingness to run as a runner is just unprecedented. He was on pace if the plays he played in 2020.
Sure.
If you put them across an entire season, he would have broke the rushing attempt record for quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't think people, when I heard that said, even I was a bit surprised. I don't think people realize how much that guy was willing to run, and he is truly driven to succeed. I'll be shocked if he's not involved. I mean, you're like drafting a quarterback and a running back at the same time. Like,
yeah.
I don't think people realize how many carries he's going to get.
I'm higher on Jalen Hurts than most. I don't know if I think he's going to end up as the number one guy too often. But I mean, to your point.
But again, I don't do my rankings as if they're a simulation. I'm predicting what I think is going to happen in a particular.
So just to make this clear, then you're high on the Eagles this year, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, not.
Thank you for explaining.
No,
that to me.
on Jalen Hurts' fantasy ability. Yeah, in particular. I mean,
I think you nailed the case for why the ceiling is super high. He's rushing the ball that many times. And maybe you think he can get to 1,000 yards. If that's the case, then he should absolutely be
in a 17-game season. I think he's going to flirt with 1,000 yards. I really do.
Ooh. Say that again, but stronger, because that's a good one. Jalen Hurts will rush for 100.
Jalen Hurts will rush for 1,000 yards in 2021. Lock it up, because you get 17 games. And he's a guy, Ryan, just can't you imagine the scenario? And again, I'm very skeptical about the Eagles' defense, in particular defensive backs. They're down 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. He drops back to pass. They're sitting back, the defense. There's going to be a giant plot of grass that you can pick up 25, 30 yards like nothing. Again, some of this is me being concerned about the Eagles' defense. Like, even the couple years where Wentz was playing well, I I never had him number 1 or top 5 because
We're gonna have to go back and check the tape.
No, maybe top 5, but I was never like crazy wonky high on him. I never made him a number 1 fantasy football quarterback. That I'm pretty sure of. He was a more willing runner in the 17 season prior to the ACL. And, knock on wood, Jalen Hurts stays healthy. Obviously, this prediction is based off that. But I think the system's going to be ideal for him. And, again, they're going to get a lot of easy stuff. He's going to get a lot of passing yards off the screen game. Yeah. So his numbers will be padded with that. And, again, you look at the red zone. The Eagles don't have a goal line back. I can't stress that enough. I think in some situations he will operate as the goal line back. If the Eagles get down the red zone, it's going to be either like Jalen Hurts to Goddard, Hurts on a boot. Miles Sanders isn't a guy that he's a guy that breaks big plays, but he's not a guy that usually gets a ton of. Like that. They don't really, and that's maybe a weakness they have in their running back stable. I mean, even a guy like Kenny Gainwell, he's more of a pass catcher, but they don't have like a pound the ball big running back guy that's definitely going to get those carries, and that's why I even like those quarterbacks more. I mean, 4 starts and he had 3 rushing touchdowns. I think he's going to get 1,000 rushing yards and double-digit rushing touchdowns, and that's going to be enough to carry his passing, which he's not going to put up these gaudy numbers like an Allen, like a Mahomes, but I think those rushing numbers are going to be what carries him to number 1.
And last thing I'll say, during that last 4-game stretch of last year, he threw the ball 135 times, ran the ball 46 times.
Yeah.
That's like a 3-to-1 ratio. Which, if that is sustained through the entire, now this could be a little bit like guy hits 2 home runs in the first day of baseball and he's on pace for 320 home runs. There could be a little of that here. There are some outliers like 18 carries versus the Saints, but I think as far as like a trajectory and a projection, it certainly shows you what the ceiling could be.
Yeah, on third down, and maybe Jalen Hurts' weakness so far is getting to that 3rd or 4th read. And if you're having trouble finding that open 3rd or 4th read, what do? You run the ball. So I think
I hope so. That's the thing where like you don't galaxy brain it, right? Like
no, and he seems like the most promising thing and the most optimistic reason why I'm high on him as a quarterback and as a fantasy guy especially is like the dude is just kind of a winner. Game on the line, he's gonna figure out a way to do something. From his whole history in college, and he takes to adversity well. He got benched. He wasn't a whiny bitch and asked to be traded. He's still stuck with Alabama. Like, I don't know. I think the ceiling is super high for Jalen Hurts, and, making him the number 1 fantasy football quarterback, I do think he has the most points, but also, like, he is still undervalued overall, I think, in the market.
Yeah.
Tremendous value, Ryan.
Let's go. I mean, look, maybe Nick Saban didn't agree. He thought Tua was better, but
well, I mean, even in limited sample size, you can't say. Would you honestly rather have Tua than Jalen Hurts? Obviously, I'm biased.
Well, it's super difficult.
What do you mean? It's easy.
I mean it's super difficult because I think we may have seen like the brightest. Like, there's a version where we saw the brightest Jalen Hurts is ever going to shine because him over processing and not just being a 1 read and go or 2 read and go. Like maybe his youthful whatever, like the fact that he knew less caused him to be more of a game play, like a player.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what fades away. I don't know. I think right now, obviously, I've seen Jalen Hurts do things that Tua hasn't yet. So. But I would love to see both of them play like 8, maybe even like 16 games. But yeah, I mean,
I'm ready to call it now. Give me Hurts over Tua any day. And that's less about Hurts. It's more about Tua sucking.
What happens if Tua outscores Jalen Hurts this year
in fantasy?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not super tied to fantasy.
What?
If Hurts is I mean, I would rather the team do well than
got it.
If you said what happens if Jalen Hurts goes, 3-14 as a starter, I'll be super fucking pissed off.
All right, let's do that. So Jalen Hurts brings the Eagles to 11-7.
11-6.
11-6, not as the number 1 fantasy quarterback, or he's the number 1 fantasy quarterback in a 4-13 13.
Oh, come
5 and 12 season.
This is a silly question. I'm a team first guy.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
When have I ever rooted for my fantasy
how about
above
this?
the Eagles?
How about-
You're talking about a guy.
how
I
about
don't have
this?
any Cowboys on my
they're
list. I've never drafted a Dallas Cowboy.
They go 9 and 8, but don't make the playoffs.
Okay.
But Tua outscores them as a fantasy quarterback. Or they have a bad real year, but Jalen Hurts #1 quarterback.
Here's what I would say in that particular where
Because they don't make the playoffs.
both scenarios they don't make the playoffs. Their season is over.
Yeah.
I would select the season where Jalen Hurts looks the best, because if he looks really good and then you have all those draft picks, then the franchise is in a better spot. So
I like that.
maybe in that situation he looks really well and the defense really sucks, but he still looks awesome. If he's getting fantasy points but looks shitty, I don't want anything to do with that.
Okay.
Not rooting for that.
Even
at
if
all.
he rushes for 1,000 yards?
Oh, I mean, I'll
That's gonna
definitely
sound
tout it. I'm definitely going to tell Dom to be like, Dom, dig up this clip where I said Jalen Hurts is going to rush for 1,000 yards. I'm definitely going to mention it. I'm going to tout it, but I'm not going to be happy about the Ryan, sometimes
Week 17 thrubbing.
Yeah. If they suck and I'm right about Hurts, well, then I'm right at least about one thing. But yeah.
At least someone on the team got something right.
Exactly. Ryan, you're talking a lot of smack for a team. You would swear the Giants were in the playoffs. The confidence.
No, that was
Giants
me. That was me making fun of your wanting to be right. No, I'm not talking smack about the Eagles, but you did make Jalen Hurts the #1 fantasy quarterback, and we're gonna have a conversation about it. So
no, I'm again. If he's not top 5, I'll eat crow. But again, I think if you can get him where you're drafting him right now, especially in best ball, it's a fucking steal.
So when do you start considering Jalen Hurts? 5th round, 6th round?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know his ADP off the top of my head, but
I would say right now.
I mean, especially in best
8th.
ball. Yeah. I mean, it looks like most places he's end of the 7th round. Again, I would I would take him. I would take him in the 7th round in like a best ball just so you get him. And again, maybe he ends up being a better best ball fantasy player because he'll just only have a couple outlier games but also like the more I'm doing the best ball, the more I think that that's how you should be drafting your regular fantasy team, because these guys who are consistent that don't really have any spikes, the guys that just get you like 7 points every week, they don't actually end up helping you win that much, because when a guy has a spike week, he gets you that W against the other person. So the more I'm thinking about, the more like my best ball strategy and season-long managed team should be the same kind of guys.
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, it depends on, I guess, the format. Not all best balls are win-loss per week. But
No. But I'm just saying, like, even in the idea of, like, you have a spiked week, that helps you win your matchup in head-to-head fantasy.
Yeah.
And obviously it helps you compile points long-term.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only difference is like sometimes certain positions it's nice to have stability, because you're going to miss more often than not. Like tight end, for example, right? Like that would be the argument of like premier versus. Anyway, that's that. A lot of we might have spent more time talking about tight ends than quarterbacks. That's okay.
We did tight ends. We knocked out quarterbacks. You just heard it. We got receivers coming up next. Of course, make sure you download the app. The SGPN app got some massive contests loading. You can exclusively enter them in the SGPN app and leave that app review. That's always awesome. Write out a little review there. And every Monday, Merch Monday, picking a lucky review winner for some free SGP gear.
Thank you for participating in the Sports Gambling Podcast.
For the Sports Gambling Podcast, I'm Sean, stacking the money green, and he is Ryan.
Best of luck, Sean. Hopefully it's not 4-13.
Kramer. Let it ride.